And there we go. We've got the recording going. Today is the 11th of April. MBA students, I want to please ask you to type in to the text chat hello or welcome for us for our guest speaker, Larna. So you can, in the text chat, please say hello. All right, and that will show us that you're with us. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I'm already some quick responses for you, Larna. Whatever, 10, 15 minutes or so, we're just looking for an informal chat from you about, give us a little context about your background, your role in innovation management and your company, any lessons that you've learned. There's no right or wrong on this. It's all good for our students to get an industry perspective. So I'll pass over to you, and I'll leave my video on if that's all right, although my microphone will be off, so that you've got someone to look at.
Fantastic. So I know you said not to do a presentation or anything, but I'm quite a visually led, hi, by the way, to everyone. I'm quite a visually led person, and I find that if I talk about something I can see, it makes it a bit easier for me. Plus, what I do is, it's not complicated, but it is complex. There's a lot of moving parts that kind of relate to each other. So it's best to kind of see that. So let me just share my screen. And you should be able to see, hopefully, that there is a presentation there, which has kind of got a young boy walking towards a door and everything else like that. So I'm Larna Mewett-Mayer, but you can find me under Larna Pantry-Mayer as well. I'm an innovation manager for Action for Children. And before that, I was a university lecturer specialising in design for innovation. And before that, I was, teacher and things like that. So it's different things. So where I work is a really, really, really big charity, but very, very few people know what we do or who we are or anything else. So basically, I work for a charity that provides foster caring. It did provide adoption kind of management until quite recently, services for families who are struggling or in critical situations, training, blues programs, kind of things, a thing called Parent Talk, another thing called Sidekick, which helps kids who are carers of their parents or loved ones. And all of those things are the result of innovation design, service design, need-based, all that kind of thing. We run about 475 services. We've got 7,000 people that work for the charity. And in total, we service 671 children, 71,000 children. And 88,000 of those are actually homeless or in care of some sort. So that's basically what I deal with. All right, so that's where I work. What I do, I thought this was a little bit more accessible to what I'm going to show you in a second. I work with horizon scanning, problem solving. People kind of come to me specifically with briefs. I do consultancy. The consultancy is basically before they start a project, they come and ask me my opinion. When they've started a project without asking me beforehand, they come and ask me to problem solve it because they've kind of gone a bit of a shift to the side, which is one project I'm working on at the moment. And I also work on something called white space projects, which are I feel something in what is called my water. I have a little bit of an inkling that I've kind of spotted an opportunity or a risk, or I've seen some policy come out recently and that's going to have an adverse effect or an opportunity in a certain area. And I want to do a bit more research into it. I want to do a bit more kind of sector scanning. I want to talk to other people in the industry about whether or not it's worth me looking in it a bit more. So my actual job day to day is a mixture of those kind of 5-ish boxes, which is research, ideation, testing, development, prototype, and then I give it to someone else to do the prototype. The pilot. So what that looks like actually in practice is quite intense, and it looks like this. So what I've done is I've also put up, hopefully, something called Mural. Okay, so Mural is something I use every day. So our actual main process involves about 5 sponsor gates, which are these yellow blocks at the bottom. And every time we hit one of these sponsor gates, we are allowed to go forward with the next point of the project. Because I work for a charity, there are pots of money which are allocated as restricted or unrestricted income. Now, if it's a restricted income, it has to output the exact thing that we say it's going to at the end of it. If it's unrestricted, I can float about a bit more and kind of make more of a decision on what the correct solution is by the end of the project. But that's just not how charities work. So if you kind of like look, it goes, have we found a kind of like challenge that contains a solution? Have we defined a user group? Have we generated the insight for that? Do we have key insight? Now, like I say, this is massive, this thing. And also we do assess, we kind of break it down into 4 main categories, which are discovery phase, defining stage, develop stage, and then a delivery stage right at the end. And during that time, we assess whether anyone wants it. So is it desirable? We assess if it's viable. So will it bring any money in? And then feasible, which is, can we do it internally or will I have to get somebody else out? Now, an element that doesn't sit on here is called right to play, or whether we should be in that space. So as a children's charity, if Barnardo's are in that space, or if ActionAid is in that space, or if another children's charity of some sort are in that space, we probably are okay to be there. But if it was something to do with recycling, or it was something to do with curing cancer, we probably shouldn't be doing a project about it because it's just not our brand space that we should be in. So that is how it generally works. And as I say, it's quite overwhelming. And that's why I do prefer to have a visual interpretation of what I'm doing. But what I thought would be best.
Sorry to jump in.
Yeah.
Just to tell you, Lorna, that because this is kind of an introduction module for these MBA students, all we've done is just a Gantt chart for the project.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah.
this is fantastic to be able to see, the next level up for them. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. So the next one, I'm hoping what I've done is I've actually, and you can use Miro for this, but we use Mural, which is slightly different. And I think you can get a free version of Mural, but I'm not sure. But I can provide a link and stuff to that. I'm going to show you from start to finish a project that I've very recently done, which I think is quite useful to have a look at. And I'm happy to answer questions about it. And I learned a lot from this project, for good or for bad. It has completely changed the way that I'm going to do projects going forward, because I think a lot of things were missed. And I think there was a lot of inefficiencies, which, because I come from a private sector background before I went into teaching, makes my skin crawl, because I work for a charity. We shouldn't be wasting money. It's just, we shouldn't. This money is donated to us, and it's very important we use it in the correct way. And if I had been working in a private sector thing, I think people probably would have got sacked a couple of times. So maybe not sacked, but definitely told off. So what it started with is that kind of box with the green thing on it with like the pictures in front. So there was a definite idea which was provided by a freelancer who came in and said there's a gap in the market for this kind of forest box idea where we could sell to parents these little activity cards, stick a load of stuff in the box, send it out once a month. They will pay X for it, and then they pay a little bit on top as a donation, as a regular gift each month. Now, how that works in long term for charity is that you get something called attrition. So people kind of drop off it and things. So you have to business model it so that the amount of money that it costs you to make is far less than the amount of money that you bring in, because by the end of it, people will fall off. So business modeling is hugely important with innovation, really, really important. So what I've got to on it, and hopefully you will see it looks a little bit better, is this kind of look, which is, the very much properly branded, very much on point, and shows the kind of age group of what we're aiming for. And it has a kind of subtle hint to the activities rather than something that slaps you in the face or anything. And also doesn't tie us to exactly what they're going to expect. So this was the process from an innovation point of view of how a innovation project should work. So We identify a general idea, which was from the insights or the horizon scanning. Somebody kind of comes forward and says, look, there's definitely a gap in the market here. I have a bit of a feeling that this could work. We then do a smoke test, which I think is in the wrong place. And having spoken to my insights crew and my analytics people and all the rest of it, they agree we should not do a smoke test that early because it is a bit of a waste of time. But a smoke test, which I found out when I first started working in charity, is, in case anyone doesn't know, apologies, is where you put an advert up on social media and it's just like a normal advert that goes out and you see how many people click on it, as in they want to buy that product. And then you pop a sign up afterwards that says, thank you very much for your interest, but actually it doesn't really exist. Very sorry to disappoint you. But if it did exist, would you buy it? Yes or no? And then people click on it or they click not. It can annoy people, but generally we get away with it a bit better because we are a charity and people are a little bit calmer about it. We had 95 clicks of it being up for less than half a day or so, which from just our Facebook page where we've already got a captive audience is really, really good. It also went up the weekend of the Queen dying. So that's the reason we had to take it down early, because it was inappropriate for us to be doing testing and advertising anything when there was a blackout on media. So we had to rip everything down. So what that then says is the pay per click, we pay X amount for the smoke test, and then you're hoping that your pay per click goes down, because every click you get makes the investment that you put in that advert smaller, as in like each person is worth more, if that makes sense. So then after we do the smoke test, we have usually do an A/B test. So we have one idea or another idea. We then pick which idea is best. Sometimes it's not the best idea because both ideas might be great, but you are cutting one idea straight out from the root. We sometimes go back to them, but not always. We then do something called a pollfish, which is a quantitative survey where I ask 100 people, based on the idea as it currently exists, what do they like about it? What do they wish it had in there? What do they wish was different? All that kind of stuff. I've actually got queued up on another presentation that if you'd like to ask me any questions about the pollfish. After the pollfish, I'll have people want a box once a month, they'll pay this much for it, this is the kind of thing that they want in it, and they want this kind of celebrity to be involved in the promotion of it in some way. Really skeleton thing, that's exactly what they want. So then I'll go on to user interviews, and from the user interviews you usually interview about 5 to 10 people in the persona demographic that you want. Ours is devoted families. Generally speaking, about 40% of our market is devoted families. They usually have 2-ish children. They're usually married, usually more mother-led than father-led for the decision making in the household. The amount of money that they kind of earn is very specific. Everything, what their interests are. Top 3 interests are reading, gaming, the gym, and they do films and everything afterwards. And the top looked at sites are things like Mumsnet, and the Lucy Porter podcast is really high, all that kind of stuff. So we've got loads of information about who we're looking for. So we then interview the mums. Generally, I had one dad just to make sure I had at least a little bit of scope. And those user interviews are absolutely essential for actually constructing what the product will look like. You know what it generally is going to be, but you don't know what it's going to have in it, what the tone of the project's going to be, what the content of the project is going to be, what it will look like. Everything like that is all down to that kind of very human-centered, user-centric approach to project development. So then I'll assumption map. So I'll have these 7 people I've spoken to, I'll have 100 people who have fed in, and I'll go, right, what am I assuming this product wants? What am I assuming that this audience really wants to feed into? And then I'll go, right, this. I need to test that, because if I don't test it, it could be a project killer. So I'll then do a project killer assessment. I will kind of break that down, and then my recommendations will come in. And usually that will be the handover point. But for this project, it wasn't. So if I just share a little bit more, from my interviews, I developed some insight about 12 children from these 7 parents, plus the 100 that kind of came in from other things. From my poll fish, I usually like to keep it quite wide. So I like to do open questions. You don't want to do too many open questions because that generally leads to incompletes. They drop off. They like to have A or B, or rank it, or a slider that says I like it or I really don't like it. Anything where you leave it open, it's not going to work. To solve that, I usually say in an open question, give me 3 keywords about how you feel about X. And then those 3 keywords will really helpfully feed into a nice kind of tag cloud or something like that. So from my insight, I broke it down into what kind of things I was hearing over and over and over again. And the thing I kept on hearing was kind of worked to something called the Maslowian hierarchy of needs. So that is your basic needs of existing, your next level up needs of kind of like social and belonging, and then the top level of needs is something called self-fulfillment. Now I'm dealing with 7 to 8-year-olds, so the self-fulfillment element is going to be quite small. So as you'll see from this bit over here, it was the belonging needs that just kept on coming through over and over again. This is the problem these children were having. So then I went through the insight and went, okay, what can I pick out? What are they saying? What's different? What's the same? And then came up with my thinking point, which were 4 of the parents emphasised the importance of development of independence and said that they would want a product that did not require a lot of parental involvement. They want it to be independent. And from that point, I put in the product proposition. So it needed to be an activity-led thing that focused on nature in a way to connect to their environment in a way that is also fun and encourages children to share what they've learned with parents. But something then came up, which was a little bit deeper afterwards, which was out of the 12 children, I think 8 of them suffered with some sort of learning difficulty or especially mental health need. So that was my USP. That was my hook, where instead of just doing a standard box forest thing, I need to do a box forest thing that completely relies on CBT practices to ground yourself in nature. So we went through this whole product finalization, the schemas, the idea schematics. I also did this thing here, which I ranked how we kind of came across as fun, or if we came across as educational, or if we came across as family oriented against our competitors. So I wanted to know, this thing here at the bottom is called a radar chart. So the yellow one in it, I'm happy to supply this. The yellow one in it kind of maps where we have our strengths and we have our weaknesses in comparison to our competitors and what our restrictions are in that area. So that went round. And then the final, I've got all of this again, like I said, I'm happy to show, but I can't share the actual main documents. All came out to this. So we made this with forest school practitioners who supported. I then tested the look, the feel, I assessed it. I made some prototype packs up and sent them to families around the UK and children. I then also did a specialist workshop with children with particularly special educational needs to make sure that it was inclusive for them, that the language was correct. But one of the big things that came out when it came to inclusivity was we had to tone down our red. So the red that is our actual brand red is a real problem for some people who are on the autistic spectrum, because it's a stop, error, warning red. So we had to make it much more brown. We changed the animals. All of the animals in this product are named after the children who helped us develop the product. So they've all got their own little story and their own little name, and it went on. But the biggest thing that I did was it just took too long. So I did something where I completely revised the way in which we do our practice. So if I go back to the mural again, what I've done now, instead of it took 18 months in total, and that is a quite common for a charity to take that long to do a product. So instead, what I've done is I'm now doing a 12-week process where week 1, I do my discovery phase. and I do it in 5 days instead. So it's much more sprint oriented, where I do a scoping workshop, I do my insight, I then do my goal mapping workshop, and I send out my stakeholder questions to clarify any assumptions that I've got. I then start on my defining stage, which is my poll fishing and my user interview things, which is my quant gathering and everything. So I do that over a space of about 3 weeks, because it will take that long to make sure people are available for it. I'll then present that information back at an ideation workshop. Let me try and move it without moving the actual thing. An ideation workshop with a little bit of contingency, where we'll do our audience research, our sector, our ideation, our prototyping. And then the thing I've now changed, which is very different, which I'll try and move across, is I've introduced a 3-idea approach. So for 1 week, I'll work on one idea. I'll present that to the team. We will then tell us whether I like it, I don't like it. It will go back out to Pollfish. It will go back out to a user to kind of look at it and say what they do or don't like. I'll then either work on an evolution of that idea, or I'll work on something completely different, which approaches the idea in a completely different way. I'll do that again. I'll do it one more time for a bit of a wild card option. And then we have our finalization and presentation, where all 3 ideas go in, all 3 ideas are then spoken about as a team, and then we decide which one it is that goes forward to be piloted and everything. So instead of 1 prototype, I now do 3 prototypes and test all 3. And that is pretty much in a nutshell what I do. So yeah, I think that was longer than I expected, but I do apologize.
No need to apologize, Larna. That was absolutely brilliant. I would ask people to applaud on the microphone, or you can do react and do clapping hands on Teams like I'm showing you now. So please show thanks. All right.
I'm
So
really
students,
happy
if you
to
can
answer
do that.
any questions. No worries at all.
No, that is
Yeah.
great. You probably won't have a chance to look through our slides and things that I just posted in the text chat, but we would invite you to have a look at that, because we're in a bit of a condensed time scale. The students are only doing a 10 credit, not a usual 12-week kind of thing. So we only started on the 29th of February, and we've got hold on a second. Is that right now? March. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so the first week in March, we started, and next week is when they're doing their presentation, which is a kind of a Dragon's Den pitch about addressing a particular issue for their company, and how that they are putting forward an innovative solution for it. But this is a really full-blown model that you're giving us, which is really helpful for the students, because ours is like, I guess you could say, like a taster for the project management and the structure and different testing and methodologies. But yours would be then to fully develop a product, and we're just kind of looking at a product that's already developed, and then making a tweak for that. But what I'm going to do is I'll start off. I'll lead with questions, because you've hit upon so many key tools and techniques and methodologies for doing this type of product innovation and development. But what because this is a recording, we want to make it as a kind of learning resource as well. I'll throw a few questions out for you. Okay, so you've outlined that specific case study, developing that resource very, very clearly. And thanks for doing the slides. Actually, I think it did add value. I just didn't want you to feel a lot of pressure to have
No
to put
worries.
something together. But if you were going to say there is one thing that you would do differently if you had to do that project over again, what would you say would be like that software or that element or that process? What would you say you would do differently?
Yeah, so we're having what is called a wash up. So we're having a post-project review where all of the departments come together and have a jovial moan about the way in which things were done, and it's a learning thing to do. If I had done my time again, one of the problems I've had to get this out to execution is that my branding team have very narrow ways of thinking, and to kind of ensure it's really inclusive, we've had to bend the branding a little bit, and I've had to go back out, retest things, and then come back and actually formulate an argument every time for them to adjust themselves. And that's something you're always going to have problems with working brands. So if I did it again, I would have done the prototype and done the pilot completely separately from the rest of the organization, and being much more in control of handing over a physical object rather than an idea to people. Because I think as soon as you hand over an idea of something, the level of interpretation from other people kind of comes in. If I'd
Yeah.
handed over a box with a set of cards that had been drawn up and some materials in there, and like sent those boxes out, physical boxes out to children, rather than I tested it slightly differently to try and save money, I basically cut corners where I shouldn't have cut corners.
Yeah.
I would have gone out and actually watched a child play with the thing and gone, okay, they really clearly struggle with this, so we need it back. One of the issues we've had is like into the actual production is it's had 9 rounds on certain boxes of review, which
Yeah.
is shockingly inefficient. So if you kind of count, yes, just shocking. If you count every single person's day as worth, say, £500 ish, kind of thing, which sounds really horrific, I'm sure, to everyone listening, but you've got to take into account their national insurance, their tax, the
Oh,
cost of
yeah, yeah,
their
yeah. No, yeah.
working environment. So
That's
each person
common for
costs,
research projects to have that kind of day
yeah,
rate. Yeah.
yeah, so about 500 quid ish. And then there is me, my project manager, a brand person, a copywriter, the head of the brand, and then you've got marketing, and then you've got maybe somebody from external services or something like that. Maybe 10 people ish in total. Compliance, fundraising, legal, coming to a meeting 9 times when it should only be 3.
Yeah.
It just I think the product's fantastic. I think the efficiencies were just not good enough,
Yeah, yeah,
personally.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. In our case, like when you're talking about testing the product, again, because of our time limitations and constraints, we're not doing as much on the front end as we could, about the
Hmm.
user personas and identifying the stakeholders. But what I'm hoping is that the students have developed some level of prototype. Now, it might be low fidelity, where they've just done, say, screen grab of with the original uh, situations they've got, whether it's the website, the app, or the training material. And then another screen grab with, some slight changes made to it in order to do, as you mentioned, that A/B testing.
Yeah.
And again, you were mentioning a number of different ways to do the testing, but I'm hoping that our students will be able to get at least one test, either a survey or an interview that you mentioned, to have
Mhm.
some kind of data that they can present in the assessment next week and say, and in conclusion, our prototype was successful because 80% of the people found it high satisfaction, something along those lines. But I was impressed, with how much detail, that you've brought into this to give our students that scope, that understanding of where, where we're introducing them to full professional level and full project, management that you've demonstrated. One more question that I'm curious about, and students, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, do feel free to post them in the text chat or turn on your microphone. Lorna, please don't take it personally if we don't get
No,
any
it's fine.
questions from the students, because in the past, they've been very shy. We've got a wide range of people from the UK and India, and in some cases, the education system that they've experienced, that they don't challenge the professor or the guest speaker. It's like
All good.
not done. So it's not that they don't find your presentation interesting or want to ask questions, but it's just a maybe a cultural taboo. Um, but
I do have,
I
when you were just saying that they're going to do a Dragon's Den style pitch, I do have one to hand. If you'd like to
oh
see the way that I sell in an idea instead, I don't know if that would be useful.
you mean a video?
No, I don't have a bit.
Or
I could make a video. I can share that with you. So, yeah, I've got so part of my job is also when I'm kind of pitching for work, if the brief hasn't come in, I need to go and find some money. And so
yeah,
to
yeah.
find some money, I need to Dragon's Den style pitch. And I do have a Dragon's Den style pitch, which is 8 pages long,
Okay,
which I can very, very quickly go through if that's helpful.
well, I because of our time
No,
limits today,
cool.
because I've got to go through and get them prepared for the assessment.
Yeah,
If you don't mind, because this is gold dust to us, what you're sharing with us. This is absolutely fantastic. If you don't mind either sending that or
I'll make a
talking it
video.
through as a
Yeah.
recording, wow, that would be absolutely fantastic. So I would really thank you for that. But just to conclude, to put things together, um, what risk would you say, like, as part of project management, is to do risk assessment, to identify where this project might fail, and what prevention, what steps can you take, what intervention can be made to prevent that from failing? So again, maybe on reflection, was there anything that you felt really was a potential threat, could cause the project to either not complete or have severe delays or severe cost implications? And again, like what could have been done maybe differently?
I think the biggest threat to any project not succeeding is ego. So when
Oh,
people, yeah,
unexpected response. Okay.
yeah, it it is some. I think that when you work in a very, very creative field, and it's all about ideation and idea development, and you kind of proving that that you come up with the most innovative solutions, the most novel things, and that tech is like they're like amazing and things like that. People get incredibly attached to an idea, and they forget that
Mm,
it's an idea. And the thing with ideas is that they should evolve and they should change. And so one of the like just letting it go when it's clearly not working is so important, and evolving
okay.
things. So the testing and the human-centered element of something, like going out and asking people, do you want it? And accepting them say no even though you've got this great idea and it will be so cool, it'll be so sexy and sleek, and it will just solve this great problem, and it's going to make £1 million, and it's like, well, nobody wants it. So it's not a good idea. Kind of thing, like, it's a
Yeah,
great,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. No,
in
that is
theory.
fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic because we're always talking about the technology and the software and this platform, and how sexy this tool is. Um, but most of the time with projects, because we're dealing with groups, and part of what we're trying to do with our assessment is that there's a group of 3, 4, 5 students in each group working together. And a
Hmm.
big part of that is communication, right?
Yeah,
Identifying in the group, okay, well, who's going to be kind of acting as the leader or the manager to steer the different tasks,
yeah,
who's doing which tasks, making sure that for each of the tasks there is a deadline, so that you can stay within the confines of the project limit. And then, all right, if um there's emotions involved, as you're suggesting, you know,
hmm
what negotiating skills can you develop? How can you know when to push and when to back off, and maybe present something not in such a hard way, but more like you said, like kind of open way that people will be more receptive to want to contribute. And that's a talent. That's a real art form to be able to do that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Um,
one,
we're
yeah, what,
Oh, go ahead. If
sorry,
you have
one.
any closing things, yeah.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that very recently I interviewed a number of people for an innovation manager role. And the
Oh,
last bit of like advice that I would give and everything coming out is that if it is a field that you want to work in, um, definitely build your portfolio. And your portfolio needs to show how you get to an idea, not just the final idea. So it's got to be, I'm looking
ah,
for your kind of your rigor, your process, and everything else. Like, I interviewed someone recently whose outcome was absolutely gorgeous, but it was the only, and he called himself an inclusive innovation designer, but he had only ever done one thing, which was inclusive and innovative. And the reason he'd done it was because his university had told him to. It was a project. And so
okay.
we will see straight through that. If you is a passion that you want, absolutely use your uni work as a springboard, but continue personal work, professional work in the background, and definitely show you're working. That's
Okay,
the only
well,
thing I want to
thank
say.
you for
Yeah.
mentioning that, because I haven't really, highlighted this, but because our MBA students, this is for a business degree, a master's degree, can use the presentations, they can use the PowerPoint slides they produce, they can use the reports that they'll generate afterwards, as evidence of their knowledge and skills and capabilities, and perhaps, as you suggest, even use that as part of their portfolio,
Yeah.
for career opportunities in this direction. So that's a really, really useful tip. Thank you so much for that. Um, I'm conscious of the time. I don't want
Yeah.
to use up too much of your time, especially with the 500-pound day rate. We don't want
Yeah. Fair.
to, blow your budget
Absolutely.
there. But thank you so much for your time and your insight. It's been absolutely priceless. We'll say thank you very much. And students, any questions or comments, please do pop that in. We can always send that to Larna afterwards. But otherwise, I think what we'll do is we'll stop our recording here and say thank you.